Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom, everybody joining on Zoom too. So this week, we have this very exciting thing. We're rereading the book of Deuteronomy. Now, what is Deuteronomy? Some people say it's rewritten Torah because we have Moses sitting there telling the people exactly what happened. But when we look in the details of Deuteronomy, if we actually compare the description in every single instance to what's described in Exodus and Numbers and even in Genesis, what you'll see is that there are some inconsistencies. This is not a biblical studies class. I'm not going to have you pull it out. We're not going to sit and go through a chart. That would be a schnoozer. Well, it would be exciting for some people, but a schnoozer for many others. Just trust me, it's not all the same. And it got me thinking as I was looking at it this week. When we tell the story of our lives, we tell it to our friends, we tell it to our family members, and sometimes we even tell it to ourselves. The question that I have is, A, are we honest with every single aspect of our internal story to other people? Do we sometimes shade it a little bit so we have some rosy color lens that we view ourselves with, and then make that ourselves look especially prim and proper, wonderful and perfect to others? Yes? Yeah, I mean, it's true. We all kind of want to make sure that other people have the best impression of ourselves. And I'm sure, just like Moses kind of did, you left off some details that we may not have wanted to, say, remember. Some of those harried moments in our lives which, well, can get a little bit even uncomfortable when we recall them. Of course, some of you do that too, I'm guessing. Yes, no, yes, okay. So the truth is, we're all, guess what, human. We're all a little bit like Moses in that we want to recall things in a very specific way. We want to recall things in a way that's going to perhaps shade who we have ultimately become. Think about it this way. 15 years ago, it's probably a safe assumption looking at you in this room, you may have made some different decisions than if you would given at the outcomes in your life. Or who you are today would tell you it's okay to make some different decisions. Maybe we're not proud of that. One of the things that I think that's exciting about becoming who we are meant to be, our highest and best self, is that we look back and we recognize that at one point we were in point A, and at a certain point we've moved to point B. And well, we want to believe that if we could have a moment where we could, jump back in time, we were living in, Back to the Future, and that was an option with our DeLoreans. We could change that decision and make a better one. But the truth is that if we were to do some of those things, changing an uncomfortable decision, we may not be the person we are today. A little amazing and gift is that all of those decisions along the way have led us to who we are today, are hopefully becoming better selves. One of the challenges that we find when we do and read the book of Deuteronomy, if we do so with an honest lens, again, thinking of ourselves, is that there are those uncomfortable moments. And obviously Moses shaded them and retold them or rehashed them in a way that was fit to his theology. There is, after all, an understanding that the author of the book of Deuteronomy had a specific theological bent. If you believe and pray to God, then good things will happen to you. If you don't, then, and you commit a sin, don't expect something good to happen. And that was the theological bent that book led to, and that ultimately led to some of the decisions that were made. But I want you to realize that you too have that running stream in your brain. You can choose to color your reflections with a specific theology at heart. And so the question I pose at you, or with you today, is, what is your internal theology? Is your internal theology judging you in a positive, affirming, uplifting way? Or is your internal theology reflecting back on your stories with a negative light? Are you harsh on yourself? Are you a harsh critic? Something that I think many of us can say we have been guilty of, being harsh more than we intend to be, especially toward our own selves. And so as we start to contemplate, and we're facing the high holiday time, this is a wonderful opportunity to sort of start to engage in some self-reflection and ask, is the internal voice consistent with the theological message or the internal message I want to tell myself? Am I being excessively judgy toward myself or excessively rosy-colored about myself? How am I really remembering and recalling all of the events? It's best, as we learn from Rabbi Zusian, if you looked at one of his stories, one of my favorite ones is as he was on his deathbed, he knew that they were not going to ask him in heaven why he wasn't the best Moses, but they were going to ask him why he wasn't the best Zusia. So the question is, when you're thinking about your best self, are you recalling that accurately so that you can propel yourself forward and continue to become your highest self? Or are you recalling, again, some skewed image, either too judged or too good, when you're crafting your own internal narrative? So as we learned, there's one other point that I would like to share, the gift of memory. The power of memory, as we've learned from psychology and neuroscience, is that it's fungible, it's flexible, it's not static. We can actually change how we recall an event. We can change how that event and what that event meant to us. We can recall it in a more positive light, where we learned things about ourselves and became our highest self. Or we can recall in a negative light. It's up to us, ultimately. But I want to encourage you to be challenged by the book of Deuteronomy. Let it be something that speaks to your heart. Let it be something that helps you consider how you rewrite your memories or maintain your memories, how you share them, in what tone, so that ultimately, as the work that was done in crafting the book of Deuteronomy and recalling all of the history of the Exodus and the history of the Jewish people, the goal would be to lift the entirety of, not just of the Jewish people in this case, but of yourself up to your highest self. Ken Yehi Ratzon, may this be God's will.